with infinite complacence, people went to and fro over the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
On this episode of Into the Fray, I welcome Patrick Roy on with me. He is an experiencer and also a fellow podcaster. His show is called Aliens for Beginners. And Patrick, on your show, it's not just aliens though, right? You cover all sorts of subjects.
Correct. Yeah, I pretty much anything that's weird, high strangeness in general, I will talk about it on Aliens for Beginners. And the name of the show it's a little bit deceiving, it's a little bit tongue in cheek, but there's something for everyone who's into this stuff will be on there.
And from the email that you sent me, it looks like you've had a lot of experiences, and those also seem to run the gamut. So I can understand why you might want to start a show and talk to other people who have also had strange experiences.
Yeah, let me say first off that you are one of the reasons that I'm doing podcasting.
Really?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. When I first started listening to podcasts, I don't know how long it's been, 8, 9, 10 years. I don't know when it was. But I had my 4 or 5 or 6 go-to shows that I would start listening to. I drive around a bit for work. So Monday morning, I'd start and I'd work my way through those shows. And yours was one of them. And I got to a point, funny enough, where I would run out. And then even though there's a million podcasts out there, I'd start poking around and without much luck. So I decided if that's the case for me, then that means there's capacity out there. And so I decided I'm going to start a podcast that I would listen to. And the rest is history, as they say.
I'm extremely humbled. Thank you so much. I mean, to be amongst just 5 or 6 that you would listen to, because as you say, there are so many out there.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's extremely humbling.
And it's a real pleasure to actually be a guest on your show. So
no, I'm happy to have you.
The honor is mine.
I am very happy to have you. I appreciate you reaching out, because sometimes I send out the Instagram or whatever, just throwing the net out there, and I'm thinking, oh, I don't know if I'll get anybody, because I'm sure that ad nauseum people know that I want to have them on the show, but sometimes that works just to throw another net out. Mm-hmm. I was really glad that you reached out. Thanks, Patrick. All right, so your experiences look like they start when you were younger, as is a lot of the times the case. And you know what's funny is that the second I saw what the first thing was, I saw a picture recently that looks extremely similar to what we're going to be talking about that someone sent me. So I'll be interested to hear this very first experience of yours.
That sounds very much like a synchronicity.
Uh-huh.
If I didn't know any better, I'd say that was a synchronicity. Yeah, so I've been on a spiritual journey, but it didn't really start until I was in my 20s. So I wasn't aware of anything as a child. But one incident that has stuck with me for my whole life, and I really don't know why, because on the surface, it's not that earth shaking. But this will be in the early 1970s. So when I was 9 or 10 years old, my family moved from Long Island to Delaware, and they purchased this piece of property that they just lucked into it. My parents, they didn't have money, and it just them acquiring this piece of property was totally synchronistic, looking back on it. And so this piece of property was 30 acres. It was very isolated. It was 0.8 of a mile just to get back to it from the main road. And the property in front of this property actually was separate, belonged to somebody else. So it was a very isolated parcel of land. And there had been a very heavy Native American presence on this piece of property. I don't know what that means. I don't know how that ties in, but there was basically an elongated mound that went down to a creek, and everyone called it the Indian Walk, and actually walked on top of it like it was a path to get to this creek. And now, looking back on it in hindsight, I recognize it as some sort of a mound. I don't have the property's been long outside of my family's possession, so I don't know whatever became of it. There was also an actual Mason-Dixon marker on this property. It's a very historic piece of property. But at any rate, we camped on this piece of property shortly after they acquired it. And my parents were big tent campers. This was hardcore tent camping back in the day. And so we camped in a tent on this property and for a night. And so early one morning, I woke up before anybody else. I poked my head out of the tent to have a look around, and a beam of amber light came down from the sky, and it touched the ground just feet from, no, I mean, guesstimating now, it was several feet, maybe 10 feet in front of me, but it was like right there. And I thought my 9, 10-year-old self that I had seen lightning. So the next memory that I had was of me explaining to my parents that I had seen lightning, and that I'd seen a bolt of lightning. A bolt of lightning came down. And they were like, "What are you talking about? There wasn't any storm or anything. There wasn't any thunder, wasn't any rain. If a lightning had struck that close, we would have heard it." And it was your typical parents not believing the kids scenario. And then they were like, "Where have you been?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" They're like, "Where you've been gone for," I don't know, it was like an hour or two. I don't know what it was. And they thought they were accusing me of having wandered off into the woods or something. And I was like, here I was, not being believed and being falsely accused at the same time. But so I remembered that for decades as the time I saw lightning, and my parents didn't believe me. And it wasn't until relatively recently, I'm 60 now, that I associated it with a possible high strangeness or UFOs or extraterrestrials or whatever. And especially given the experiences that began to crop up later on in my life, I looked back on that and I was like, okay, maybe that wasn't lightning. But I can't say for sure. Like that's the entirety of the memory. I don't know if, I mean, it seems to me there was some missing time there, but I have no further recollection of it other than that.
Do you recall being scared or how you felt when you saw that beam of light?
I was not scared. I'm a weird person. Like I don't have, I just don't have fear. Like I don't get afraid of stuff. No, I wasn't scared.
So your parents were more annoyed. They weren't at the point where they were frantic by the time to them that you showed back up.
No, because back then it was a different world. And
yeah.
We ran around in the woods. We would disappear for all day, and we'd be carrying guns and stuff. It was It was a different time.
Yeah.
And so if a kid missing for a couple hours in the woods wasn't a big deal back then.
Yeah, unless they find pieces of your clothes just strewn around or something. There was no search party called. I get that.
They weren't even looking at me at that point.
Back when us kids used to play outside.
Yeah.
What? Crazy.
It's funny because looking back on that in hindsight, that I didn't appreciate, obviously. We never appreciate what we had when we were kids.
Yep.
And, having that big piece of property to traipse around on, go fishing on, and ride a dirt bike. And, oh, man, I wish I had it now.
I think about that a lot. I try not to dwell on it because it makes you sad. But you think about those times and you go, those were the best times of my life, and I didn't even know it.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, that gets you in the feels when you really start to think about it, especially when certain
Mhm.
people are not around anymore, things like that. You're like, ooh, that's a stinger. So this property even had a possible burial mound on it.
Yeah, I'm not an expert on those things, but I've seen pictures and stuff online of Indian burial mounds, and that is very much what it looked like. And again, we just used it for a path to get down to this creek. And my mother, who was extremely just like naturally psychic, she would she saw, quote unquote, saw Indians on the property. So, whether visions of yesteryear or however that works. But yeah, she would see old timey characters wandering around on the property.
What about your dad? Did he ever experience anything?
No, he like anything he experienced was vicariously through my mom. She was she was strange enough for the both of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this property, you guys owned it. How long did you own it for? How many times did you go out there?
I lived there. I lived on this property for 11 years.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. And
So,
what's strange is there was no electricity on this property. And we had to use a generator for electricity. And we didn't have a phone. And so it was very isolated existence for a young person. Very unusual, not like how my friends lived. But we did have a generator. Eventually, we got a generator where you just flip a switch and it turns on and everything comes on. So it wasn't like total roughing it, but it's a very different way to have been brought up.
so do you recall you personally having any other experiences while you were on that property?
I do not. No, that was my one. Aside from my mother's stuff, that was my one memory from my childhood of what I would call high strangeness.
So is that property now, like what's going on there now? Since there is some kind of a marker, it's historical, and I don't want you to give away the location or whatever if that's the case that we're trying to keep that kind of under wraps, but is it still privately owned by somebody you think, or is it on public lands now?
This is a very sad part of the story. I did go back and check it out maybe 15 years ago or so, and it's basically gone. This is one of the big regrets of my life, actually. It's a literally a big hole in the ground. It was sold to a sand and gravel company.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and this would have happened in the the mid 1980s, and I don't know like how much regulation there was. I don't know if anybody even knew about it. I don't know if there was anything in place to prevent that from happening, but no, that's totally what happened. Very sad.
And Patrick, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with what you mentioned. You said something about a Mason Dixon, like a marker or something. Like it was a
Yeah,
historical marker.
it was left by, I guess, these guys, Mason and Dixon. They did a tour like Lewis and Clark, and they would left these markers. Yeah, and I'm not an expert on them, but they're scattered around I believe, of the East Coast. But it's just like a big concrete marker.
It seems like that alone would have saved it somehow, but I guess not.
Honestly, I don't know who knew that it was there.
Yeah.
I don't know. These people that my parents bought it from, they were very old when they sold it, and they had lived there forever. So I, it's entirely possible that nobody even knew that it was there.
So you guys were always in tents, or was there ever a building put up for you guys, a house, anything, a
No,
cabin,
we
whatever?
had a no, we got there was a small cottage type place there on the prem that we eventually moved into once this older couple moved out, and we did eventually get like they call it a double wide. It's like a double wide mobile home. Yeah, we got that, and when that was hooked up to the generator and everything, it was pretty close to normal, but not quite. But very very unusual.
Yeah, but that sounds just, especially for kids, that's perfect. That's amazing.
Well, it wasn't amazing at the time, but yeah, no, I totally get it. Yeah,
Yeah.
but we had fun. We had horses and goats and chickens, and it was bordered on. In addition to the creek, it was bordered on the Choptank River, and so you'd walk down to the river, go fishing. So yeah, it was, as I said, I didn't appreciate it at the time.
Now, besides that old couple that was in the cottage you guys eventually moved into, how many other people were around this area?
On this property.
Even just around the 30 acres. What was on the outskirts of your
Oh,
30 acres?
a very very small town, a no stoplight town.
Okay.
Yeah,
Very cool. Very interesting. That is an interesting way to grow up for sure.
yeah, it was.
When your mom would see these Native American spirits, whatever we're going to call them, would she immediately go, "Oh, hey, you guys, there they are. I see them." Was this a recurring thing and then no one else could see them but her?
My impression is that now, bear in mind, this is 1970s. My mother grew up in a Catholic family, and back then, these types of quote unquote gifts were not as appreciated as they are now. And it was like a hush hush thing. She wasn't very open about it. Occasionally, something would come out, and a lot of the information that I got came out considerably after the fact. And a lot of it came out when I was an adult. So I didn't realize the extent to which my mother was psychic until I was into my adulthood, and then just realizing, oh, and then that explained a lot of other stuff. But no, it was not like it wasn't an open thing. It was hush.
So that is the next point on your list was the fact that your mother was psychic. So did you want to share some of those things that you learned later on that tied directly into her being psychic that made sense once you figured it out?
Yeah, so fast forward to somewhere around 2008, 2009, she had purchased or inherited another historical property. I don't know what she's like a magnet for these things in another small town in Delaware, and this was originally the original section of this house was built in 1789. Is in a historical section of a historical town in Delaware, and her husband, who left it to her, was actually an archaeologist, and it had been added on to over the years, and I've been on and off estranged from my mom. She passed away 9 years ago, by the way, but I had been on and off estranged from her because she was a difficult person. She was a very difficult person, but reconnected with her around this time frame, I think around 2007, 2008, 2009, somewhere in there. And she was in this historic house. This was a 4,000 square foot house. It was run down. And I was decided to help her manage this place. And so I started spending more time over there trying to paint and do some repairs and stuff like that. And over the course of doing that, she opened up about a lot of stuff in a way that she hadn't before. And she would tell me like all kinds of crazy stuff about visions she'd seen and spirits she'd seen. And so I was in a room in this house painting, and my mom was sitting in there, and she said, "Someone's here now." So some spirit or whatever had walked in, and this house was actually a stop on the Underground Railroad as well. So I don't know. She's like a magnet for these weird historic properties. But yeah, all of her psychic gifts that I didn't know about, she started to share and more information about that. And for example, in one case, she told me about when someone in a Civil War type uniform appeared to her and told her that something to the effect of, "Don't worry, at least it's not your house that's burning," and there was a fire in a shed, this kind of thing. So the there's a lesson, though, in all of this, because, as I said, the time frame that she grew up, and she was 74 when she passed away in 2016, it did not lend itself to these gifts. And people, I don't think she managed it very well. So I've seen many cases of this where people are gifted in this way, and because they don't have guidance or they don't know how to manage it, it ends up being to their detriment. And I think that was actually the case with my mother, with these psychic gifts that she had. But yeah, we would be in the house and she would talk about, all right, someone's in the room now. At that time, I still wasn't like very spiritually minded, and like I didn't pick up on any of this stuff. And that hadn't started for me then. Whatever she was experiencing, I wasn't. I was just listening to her talk about it.
Did you already realize at that point? I can see what's coming up later on, of course. You sent me the email. Did you realize before she passed that you also had a certain connection to things?
Okay, prior to this, in the 1990s, I got involved in a pretty fundamentalist Christian sect. It was a really niche Christian sect. And while I was involved in that, I had some spiritual type experiences, paranormal experiences. And I was coming out of that during this time when I reunited with my mother. So I was at that point, I was kind of in this mode of, these things probably aren't good. Witchcraft bad, like psychic stuff bad. I was a little bit in that was the devil mode. And I never put, to me, it was probably at that time, I regarded it as probably not a good thing. But no, aside from that, and there was some weird stuff there too. I didn't really I didn't see myself as being an experiencer or anything like that. And I can talk more about what I experienced in the Christian sect if you want, or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. First, real quick though, I mean, your mother to that sect, as you say, everything is demons and the devil and it's all bad. She would not have been welcome in where you were at that time, right?
I was, yeah, I was easing out of it at that point. I was pretty much out of it. I got out of it in like 2005, and this was a couple 3 years later, and but it was still lingering. That's what you were around for 10, 12 years. It kind of have that lingering in your mind, the residual effects of that. And so to me, I wasn't like, oh my God, this is, I was like, all right, it is what it is. It's probably not good. That was my attitude towards it.
My mind goes, of course, immediately to the Waco situation. They're all in a big house together, or maybe to Warren Jeffs, where they have essentially their own town, if you will, in a compound.
Mm-hmm.
What was the living situation for this sect?
Okay, so there was no communes or compounds or anything like that. However, it was not too far from what you just described, but it's a little more subtle. So when you can look at something like the Warren Jeff situation, and anybody can label that as evil. When you looked at this, It looks okay, and the darkness is more subtle in there. But this was, everybody, they lived where, but basically this sect was based around following of a prophet, like so many other of these. And this prophet that they followed was an evangelist who passed away in the like 1965, and they put him on a pedestal, and they printed all of his all of his sermons were recorded, and they printed them out, and that's kind of like what they go by. And that's what this was all about. Now, when I originally got involved in this, in my early 20s. I had no I was an atheist. I had no spiritual inclinations whatsoever. And I would tell people I was, an atheist if I was asked. And I had started a construction business right out of college, a subcontracting business, and I had various clients I did work for. And one of my clients, a new client that I'd gotten, was a member of this sect. And we worked on some projects together. I respected him. He was a stand-up guy. So if he had something to say, I would listen to him. He had credibility with me. And every once in a while, he'd drop a Bible verse or something, or some Bible nugget. But he started talking about some of his personal experiences, which were full-on supernatural stuff. Talking about like seeing visions, seeing angels, seeing demons, this kind of stuff. So if we were working on a job, and he would say, "Do you see that light flying around?" I'm like, "No." He's, "Well, that's an angel." And he told me of a situation where he saw a demon leave his body, where he was laying in bed, and he said this thing came out of his chest, floated up to the ceiling. It looked like a crab, scurried into the corner, and disappeared. So I had never heard anything like that. And he would talk about visions he would seen, like he said he was shown a vision of a truck that he was going to buy, and then he found the truck and he bought it, and different things like this. So I never heard anything like that, and I was like, wow. I said, I gotta check this out. So I started asking some questions, and when I started asking some questions, I guess he figured he had me on the hook. And he gave me a Bible, actually a really nice Bible, and I thought, I'll just read this Bible. And then I don't know, I didn't see him for a couple 3 weeks at one point, and when I saw him again, he asked me, "How's it going?" I said, "I'm just reading this Bible." And he's like, "You're reading the Bible cover to cover?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "You don't have to do that." He said, "Just read these books." And that's when he handed over these books from this prophet guy. And so I was like, okay. So I started reading these books, and they were like little pamphlets of his sermons. I think there was like 2 or 3 big books. And when I started reading these books, something happened. I made contact with something, and I assumed it was the Holy Spirit, the Holy Ghost. And this is going to come up later, but I experienced this presence or this energy that it was very intense. It felt really, really good. It felt like a drug, like a narcotic or something. And it would last for hours when I was reading these books. And this guy, he told me, he said, if you want to learn, if you want this to open up for you, he said, this is supernatural. The Bible's a supernatural book. If you want it to open up for you, you got to ask. He said, you have to ask for this wisdom, and you do that in prayer. So I said, okay. So that's what I did. So I prayed and I asked for this to be opened up to me and this wisdom. And oh man, some stuff opened. And so I made contact with this being, whatever it was, that gave me this, that I could sense its presence. And in the course of reading these books, it was almost like I started to have a conversation with something. And so I'd have a question, or something would be on my mind. Next time I picked up the book, there was the answer, there was something related to that. And there was this back and forth with this entity that I could feel its presence. And I to me, I enjoyed this and I was getting a lot out of it. But on the flip side of this whole experience, there was this really dark undertone. And so I'm going to say I was never like 100% in. I did go to church. I didn't go like every Sunday or every Wednesday night, but I did go often. And th- this was a doomsday cult. Okay. These people believed that the rapture was coming, it was going to happen in their lifetime, and only a few people were going to go. So with you raising your children in that belief, that's pretty stressful. To me, that's like abuse. And so also doctrinally speaking, like there were a lot of things that weren't that great. Women couldn't cut their, here's your Warren Jeffs stuff. They had to wear dresses. They couldn't wear pants. Women had to be subservient. So all of this stuff that was dark that kind of went along with this. And I could never reconcile it. I was like, yeah, and that was why I never got all in, because while I'm at the same time over here, I'm having this experience over here is all this stuff that's not doesn't seem very good. So I got away from the whole thing, and that included reading the books, that included communing with whatever this presence was, and that kind of went away for then. But then I got a similar experience many years later. I don't know if any of that made sense.
No, it does. I find this stuff extremely fascinating.
Yeah.
And because I was going to ask, what are the core beliefs? What was the point of it? And you said it was a doomsday cult. So essentially,
It's still going strong.
it is. Okay, that was my next
Yeah,
question. Holy
it's still
smokes,
going
really?
strong. Yeah, I don't know if you want me to name it, but
It's up to you.
they follow a guy named William Branham. And they call them Branhamites. They don't call themselves that, but they consider this guy William Branham to be what they call the seventh angel, or the seventh messenger to the seventh church age. And they consider him to be like the second incarnation of John the Baptist to forerun the second coming of Christ.
Wow.
And yeah, and their core beliefs is basically that the rapture is upon us, and only a few people are going, and the rest are going to be left for this tribulation period. And very fundamental belief. They're they regarded the Catholic Church as basically demonic. Actually, they were against like all of the other denominations. Like they were it. Like everybody else was wrong. They were right, which is like a common theme. But yeah, thing to be involved in, and people were traumatized in this. And if you like, you can watch some of these sermons online. I haven't done it for many years, but you're like, you mean there's kids in this congregation and he's preaching this stuff? Yeah, it's just, I don't know. It wasn't good. I have a theory on it, on this whole thing now, kind of a working theory. I can share that with you if you want.
Yeah, please do.
Okay. I guess you're familiar with Lush and all that those theories of energy siphoning. And to me, what I think this is, I call it rogue entity theory. And I think it's just as simply as this, because there's other situations where this has happened. The Welsh revival is another example where there was a UFO type presence and weird stuff going on. But to me, because this was so traumatic and trauma inducing, and it engendered a tremendous amount of mental anguish. And like when you went to these church services, they would have altar calls at the end, and people would be up there screaming and crying and everything else at these altar calls. So it was very charged emotionally, and most of the services were very charged emotionally. And so what I think is that whatever this entity was that kind of cobbled this together is feeding off that energy, honestly. And I think that all of this energy that was generated by this trauma, this mental anguish, and this conflict, and even of having to live this certain way in the modern world. And I think all of that negative energy that was generated, I think something was feeding off of that. That's just my working theory on that.
And then that entity just needs a poster boy, essentially in a meat suit for everybody to follow.
Yeah, yeah.
What
I mean,
about polygamy, underage marriages? Was there that kind of stuff going on?
no, there was nothing like that going on. And they were actually vocal against that kind of stuff. So I got to give them credit for that. There was nothing like that going on other than the women. You didn't want to be a female growing up in this. You definitely did not want to be a female. Like they didn't even want their women working. Or you were a homemaker. You were to take care of your husband and cook the meals and have children. No, there was no polygamy or anything like
At
that.
least there's that.
Yeah, right.
There's polygamy
Look
with
at the
the
bright side.
underage, all that stuff that was going on at Moore and Jeff's neck of the wood. No,
Yeah,
no,
it's
no
horrible.
good.
Yeah,
No good at all.
yeah.
Was there one single thing that made you want to start to taper out of that situation, or what was the deal there?
There was actually, now that you mention it. And I was living in Pennsylvania I had gotten a promotion at work and I was in Pennsylvania from about 2000 to 2004. And I had some fellowship with some of the people up there. But then I had an opportunity at work came up to move back to the Delaware area, which I took. And I hooked up with another one of these churches in Delaware. And this church really gave me a bad vibe, really gave me a bad vibe. And I knew there was something off about the pastor. And this might be like, you asked me if I'm aware of having gifts or anything. I think I've been pretty highly intuitive most of my life, without realizing. Because when you grow up with it, you don't know. So you don't have something to bounce to compare it to. But one of the big tenets, like this sect had foundational tenets that you just didn't go against. So there were rules for different things. And there were rules for being a preacher, for being a pastor. And one of those rules was you could only have had one wife. And you can't be divorced and remarried and be a pastor. I found out that this pastor, in fact, was divorced and remarried. And that kind of kicked it in gear for me. And I was like, okay, that's messed up. I don't care, but if you're putting yourself out there in a certain way and you're not, then I got a problem with that. So that was the instigator, maybe, for me to rethink that. And then I phased out of it after that. But let me tell you, you hear about stuff like deprogramming and things like that. That's real. If you're involved in something like that, in particular, if you've had a real experience, like a spiritual experience in it, it is really hard to disconnect from that. Very difficult to disconnect from that. But yeah, I was able to do that over finally. I think really like 2004, 2005. 2005. I think was probably last year that I was involved in it to any extent, and then I went my own way after that.
What about being disconnected from the outside world? When you were full in this, were you folks not able or not supposed to listen to the radio or watch certain TV shows? Was there control in those ways?
Oh yeah. And let me also say that I was married at the time. And when I first got into this, my wife was pregnant with my first child. I have two daughters. And she was not down with this. She was not down with this. She was not happy with me being in this, to her credit. But she did, to her credit, again, she did come to church with me a few times and listen to stuff that really made her blood boil. So I got to give her I give her a lot of credit for that. But yeah, you could not wear shorts. You could not have a TV in your house. You could not go swimming. You could not have a swimming pool. You could not listen to rock music. Basically, Any music that you listen to other than praise music, you were worshiping the devil, essentially. Yeah, there was a lot of legalistic kind of stuff. Now, I didn't I did not enforce that upon, my household, but I did try to push it in what I direction. But yeah, we had all that going on.
So, what's the thought behind the you could not go swimming? Does that just simply tie into the fact that if you can't wear shorts, how in the world are you going to go swimming? Or a
Yeah,
woman can't just
it's all
plop in a
about
dress?
it's all about modesty,
Okay.
modesty and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
So, just the attire that would go along with
Yeah,
swimming?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. It's fascinating. So you didn't, so if your wife wasn't going along with it, she wasn't too thrilled about it, but you were full in it. Did you guys have a TV in your house?
Yes, we did. Yeah.
Did they know that you had a TV in your house? Would they talk to you about that?
I mean, they knew that my wife wasn't all in, and that was another troubling piece of it. It was some of the advice that I got with regard to that piece of it. And so that was another troubling piece of it, was that. Now, I wasn't they weren't going to kick me out or whatever, but if your wife wasn't in line, then I was like, maybe you had a problem.
Yeah, like it would seem like they would always kind of look at you as a semi outsider since your wife
Yeah,
wasn't in it.
exactly. Yeah, it was a reflection on me,
Yeah.
basically.
Wow. Yeah, that's some hardcore stuff, huh?
Yeah, it's pretty brutal. Yeah. So I got to give my wife credit for she really put up with some
She
nonsense.
stuck to her guns though. She
Yeah,
never
yeah,
was
totally.
she
Yeah.
ever close to going, "Okay, I could maybe get into this."
Nah, nope. To
Did
her credit.
did she have any paranormal experiences that you could probably tie into the fact that you were going praying to and
She did
seeing these
not.
beings?
No.
Okay.
She hadn't. No, not whatsoever. And to this day, no.
Yeah, that is fascinating. Okay, so you get out of that and then the next bullet point, and I don't even know if I don't want to butcher the name that's here, but you started to pray to a certain goddess.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So fast forward in a spiritual void for a while. And around 2012, my family, my wife and my kids started watching this show called Supernatural. Are you familiar with that?
Not really.
The it's a it was a really popular show. It was about a couple brothers, the Winchester brothers, and they're like demon hunters or something. And they based this show, the stories of the show were based on actual lore and mythology. And so I watched the show with them, and then I was really fascinated with the lore that they based the plots on. And I would go and do research on that. So this led me into researching mythology, lore, ancient esoteric stuff. And I started getting into ancient Sumer and ancient Egyptian deities and into some occult stuff. And all this stuff started to really pique my interest. And so just started doing research in earnest on this just because I was interested and it was fascinating to me. And I think that this was, like I said, I'm on a spiritual journey. That was part of all of this is part of my spiritual journey. Even being in this fundamentalist Christian sect, I was supposed to be there, because I'm still learning lessons from having had that experience now, decades later. So all of this, including my weird childhood back in the woods, I see all this now as part of my spiritual journey. So researching, getting involved in this new interest was part and parcel of that, although I did not realize it at the time. Now I realize it. So I was reading an article on the goddesses Inanna. She's also known as Ishtar, Roth, Astarte, Isis. There's some debate as to who is who among all these names. Is this the same person? Is this two different people? So all of that is confusing. But in the Sumerian mythology, her name is Inanna, and she was one of the, I guess you would call them Anunnaki or whatever. She was with Enki and Enlil and that group. And so I was reading this article on her, and she was a very popular goddess in the ancient world in what is now Iraq. There were temples dotted the countryside to this goddess. She was a main goddess of war, goddess of sex, fertility, all these different things. And I was looking at some of the pictures of her temples and the ruins of some of these temples, and I was reading this article on her, and I was like, wow, she's cool. Like, I was like, this goddess is cool. Like, I could totally go to a temple and worship this goddess. And I just got this appreciation for this goddess. And I said a little prayer to her, I'm just being goofy. I said a little prayer to this goddess, just like when I prayed back in the other thing. And this was late at night. This was like before bedtime. I was doing this reading. When I got up in the morning, there is this very intense energy, this presence that was just like what I had experienced previously in the other thing. And I describe it. If you've never experienced this, it's really hard to describe it. It's like a drug. It's like a narcotic. And this was very intense. It lasted several hours. And I felt it very intensely over the course of the next few weeks, on and off. And to me, that was this being. This was this goddess acknowledging my presence, that I had said something to. I had made contact, basically, this goddess. And so at the time, I was like I knew that this was very similar to my previous experience, but I couldn't like get my head around it because they were two totally different. This would be regarded as demonic by the other thing. Yeah, that's what happened with now I still experience this. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm still in contact with a lot of these gods and goddess type beings. And that I expanded my research, and I got further and further into stuff along those lines. And I guess I would describe myself as, I don't know, somewhat of a deist or maybe a pagan at this point. But yeah, so I made contact with this goddess, and it was just like the previous thing. Now, very interesting, something that's just recently come up is I interviewed a guest just 2 or 3 weeks ago who was an alien abductee who had an experience with being taken by basically some grays and one praying mantis, one mantid being. And she woke up during this experience, and she said she was so scared she thought she was going to die of fright. She said her heart was beating out of her chest, and she was in full out panic. And this mantid being touched her, was standing behind her, it touched her on the shoulder. And she started describing being flooded with this blissful, narcotic type of feeling, and all her fear was gone, and she felt great. And I said, wait a minute. I said, that sounds familiar. And what she described is exactly what I experienced. And I told her, I said, I've experienced this. I know exactly what you're talking about, but it wasn't in this context. There's this strange overlap with this ability, and I've encountered it. I've heard about it like in podcasts, or I've read about it before, of people experiencing this induced euphoria around non-human intelligence. And so I don't know if this is just like a tool in their toolbox that they can use. I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's a way to get what they need from you, or to keep you calm, or to keep you happy when it's not supposed to be a happy encounter. Who knows?
I don't know. Yeah.
And Inanna was not the only being that you've had contact with from the looks of it.
No, I had contact with during that time with many types of beings because I had opened myself up and I was doing a lot of meditation. And when you work on that piece of yourself, you start to you start to glow on the astral, so to speak, and you start to catch the attention of beings. And for example, Whitley Strieber, I believe he was into meditation prior to his experiences. And he said when he asked what did he call them? The visitors, why they picked him, and their response was, we saw a glow. So, yeah, when you work on this part of yourself, your soul, whatever, things begin to notice, and they'll come around. And then if you indicate that you're willing to communicate with them, then there are some of them that'll be willing to communicate. And while I was researching this stuff, reading this stuff, and it was just straight up hobby. I was learning about some occult stuff. And one of these things was using a pendulum for divination. And I read this article and I was like, I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna try this. So I had an old, I don't know, it's like an old dried up chicken wing bone, and I got a piece of black thread, and I was sitting at my desk. Actually, it was at work, like at lunchtime one day. It was just me by myself in my office, and I made this thing, and then I was like, I had a question, was like, I wonder if this is okay, and I held it out, just admiring it, and when I thought, I wonder if this is okay, it started to go like big time, and I like put it down. I was like, whoa. So I got involved in using this pendulum to communicate with different beings. And then I started to feel like different presences would come around. And I could recognize, like, there was one that kind of felt like almost like you're on a roller coaster, like the feeling in the pit of your stomach. And so there were different energies that didn't mind coming around. And I was like I told you, I'm not a fearful person. I wasn't afraid of this. And so I got this idea where I'm going to use a Ouija board, but I'm going to use this pendulum instead of the planchette. So that's what I did. And I got all kinds of messages, and I didn't save them. I didn't have them anymore, but uh, just goofy, silly stuff to goofy cool, or just like goofy stuff and like that. And they were a lot of them were just like trickster, goofy, like silly stuff. And then they figured out, I don't know, they had this thing where they could give me a tingling in my temple if they wanted my attention. And then that started to get a little bit much. It was like the floodgates open for a little while. And I didn't mind it because it was fun just talking to these different beings. But the weirdest message I ever got was there were these three beings. They were sisters, I believe they were sisters. And they told me I was their brother. And I was like here. My senses, I was here, but I was really like one of them, and I was their brother. And they told me I had a different name, and I said, "Oh, okay." So I was like, "Okay, what is this name?" And so I started using the pendulum and the Ouija board, which was just me writing the alphabet on a piece of paper. And it's spelled out, I kid you not, it's spelled out Beelzebub. And I was like, oh, you guys are really fun. That's pretty hilarious. Let's try this again. And it spelled out Beelzebub again. I was like, come on. I said, I'm not Beelzebub. And they were like, yes, you are. I'm like, no, I'm not. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I tried it like 6 times, and each time it started out the same way. And then I even went back like later and tried it, and it started doing the same thing. I said, you guys let me know when you want to have a serious conversation. But anyway, that was just weird now. And I'm like, well, they're messing with me. And I don't, there could actually be something to that because I've done some research over the years, and that Beelzebub is Baal, the god of the Old Testament. And the name Beelzebub is actually something that was given to him as a diss. So I mean, there's his names are Baal, Baalzebul, Beelzebub, all these different names. But Beelzebub was given to him by his adversaries as a diss, and it means Lord of the Flies. But his true title would be Lord of all that flies, like Lord of the Air or whatever. So they twisted around. This was how they basically, the deities of the ancient world that were the cultures that were wiped out in the Old Testament, the military campaigns and genocides in the Old Testament, were these pagan cultures that followed these pagan deities like Baal, like Inanna, like Isis. And if you I started researching this a bit, and Baal in the Old Testament, he was Yahweh's nemesis. Yahweh didn't like Baal. And what happened was the Israelites, they liked Baal, and they liked worshiping Baal, and they liked hanging out with Baal's people. And every time they did that, they'd get in trouble. And so Baal was this other deity of the Old Testament. And when you actually look at the research, at the facts, he wasn't really like that that bad. Like, he was pretty popular. He seemed like a reasonable guy. And these deities, they got demonized, and so we have the grimoires that have these ancient deities all labeled as demons, the demon version. So the demon version of Baal is Beelzebub. And so what I'm learning is that, how in Christianity the plan for salvation is to repent, be baptized in the name of Jesus Christ, and receive the Holy Ghost. And this is something that we were taught in this fundamentalist Christian sect, is death to self. So whether you want to call that ego or whatever, so that the Holy Ghost could come in and dwell in you. And then it's not you, it's the Holy Ghost, it's Jesus Christ living in you and manifesting you, but they don't call that possession in that context. So if that entity can do that, then so can these other entities. And so I think that these ancient deities, this is getting weird, I know. Just let me know if it's getting too weird.
I like
It's
weird, so
they can splinter off an aspect of themselves and put it into a human being, just like the Holy Spirit can. In the New Age circles, for example, the Dolores Cannon type circles, Dolores Cannon said that the oversoul is fractal. And when it splits off different aspects of itself into different vessels at the same time. So while we experience time in a linear fashion, that's just how we experience it. All of your incarnations are happening at the same time. So when the oversoul splits these different aspects out into the universe or whatever, could be on different planets, whatever, and they're all living out these things at the same time. And that's why people say you can do things like quantum jumping or changing timelines, because all of this is happening at the same time. So what I'm considering, and I'm not saying this as a fact, but having revisited this weird thing, Ouija board session from years ago, I think in that context, it's entirely at least plausible. Like, you can make a case for it as possibly being something that's real. So if the Holy Ghost can, if Jesus, If Christ consciousness can split itself up and put itself into different people, then why can't another entity, why can't another deity do the same thing? So that's something I'm exploring now. And then there's a tie in with non human intelligence, what we would traditionally think of as extraterrestrials or interdimensional or something like that. And there's a tie in there. So it may be that some of these deities, these beings, were projecting a certain version of themselves to humanity in order to interact with humanity. For example, a giant praying mantis, you're not going to interact very well with that, right? But a beautiful blonde woman, you'll be more likely to interact with. So I think there's something along that line going on as well, and that's like where I'm at currently, is exploring these aspects.
So is that essentially why you've had several UFO sightings, you think?
It may be. It's all tied up together. I don't know how, but it's all related. But I can talk about the UFO sightings if you want.
Yeah, please do.
Okay, the one that stands out the most is the orange sphere, and these are fairly popular. It's just a big orange ball. And I was actually watching a UFO show, and the show was over, and I went out to do some mundane chore, take out the trash or something in my driveway, and I see this orange sphere up in the sky. It's some distance away, and it had to have been pretty large for the distance that it was. I would say it was maybe a mile away, and it moved a short distance, and it would leave a trail of itself, and then it would stop, and this trail would catch up with it. And it did that 4 times. So move a short distance, and this trail of itself would catch up with it. And I didn't have my phone with me, and I said, I'm gonna go get my phone, see if I can get video of this thing. I've seen it, so I can say I've seen it. Now I'm gonna try and get the video. So went in, got the phone, came out. Of course, it was gone. Now, interestingly enough, again, this 2 guests ago on the show, the same one that had the euphoria feeling, also saw one of these orange spheres. And she and her daughter saw it when her daughter was 12 years old. This was some time ago, maybe 10, 12, 15 years ago. On the 4th of July, she said they were walking to some fireworks, and they saw what they thought was a Chinese lantern. This was in broad daylight. And it turned out not to be a Chinese lantern. It was one of these orange spheres. And then they didn't have any memory after that. And then the following 4th of July, like, they both remembered at the same time. So apparently they both had some missing time after they saw this orange sphere. She described it exactly as this orange sphere that I saw. And it's really interesting to me that this random guest has had a couple experiences that kind of line up with my experience. But that was it for that. I just saw it. I tried to get it on video, and I didn't. Then there was another orb that's sitting in my living room. I get strange aircraft over my house occasionally, and I can hear fighter jets. And I'm like, what in the world are they? And you can hear them. They're flying around. It sound like 2 of them flying low, back and forth. And so I'm going to go out and see what's going on here. I grabbed my phone, see if I can get video of these fighter jets. And they're like trailing off. And I see this is a white orb kind of off in the distance. And it was blinking. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to get a video of this. And of course, my phone is dead. And so I was like, damn it. So I had another phone. It was my work phone. So I went in and grabbed that. And I was able to get some video of it. But I interacted with this thing. And it was like blinking. It was hovering. It would move a little bit. I said, can you shoot off for me? And it blinked out. And then it came back. And when I played the video later, you can see it shoot off, but I couldn't see it like when I was watching it. And then it came back. And this thing gave me a download. And at this time, I was just starting my podcast. This was only 3 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. I was just starting my podcast. And when I first started my podcast, my idea was just like every other UFO podcast. I was going to talk about weird UFO sightings. And my goal in going out there with my phone was to get a video that I could put on my social media. That was what I wanted to do. And so I was hoping to get a video of this thing. I could put it on Instagram. And this thing gave me a download that now I've since gotten many downloads, but I divide them into two categories: what I call statement download and what I call concept download. So, statement download is just like a sentence. A concept download is like a whole idea concept that just like drops in, and that usually kicks in like gradually. It's not like instantaneous. And so I got a download from this orb, and the download was basically, that's not what we want you to do. We don't want you trying to get pictures of UFOs, posting UFOs online. We don't want that to be your, the purpose of what you're doing. We want you to go deeper than that. So that's fine for other people, but not for you. So we don't want you doing this thing where you're trying to get videos to put online, or we don't want your work to be at this superficial level of ufology. It's like we want you to look deeper into this stuff. And so I was like, okay. So I said, okay. So out of respect for the message that I got, I'm not going to do anything with this video. And I never did anything with the video. So, yeah, that was the download that I got from that orb. So that was pushing me to where I am now and where I'm going with my show. I'm trying to start out Aliens for Beginners was kind of what it was going to be. But I get into some word like deeper. So I really delving into some stuff. So that's, yeah, that was the download that orb that I got from that orb.
Have you ever experienced the silent, downwashless black helicopters?
No, I have not experienced those.
So you feel like when the UFOs come in, some of the time, then jets could accompany that sighting.
They did that time. That's, I'm trying to think if, I don't even know. There might not even have been jets. I heard the jets, but I'm wondering, like, did they do that to get my attention to get me to come out? You know what I'm saying? So I don't even know. But I've seen like weird aircraft just doing weird things. And like I've put a couple of the TikTok is my primary social media. I put a couple every once in a while I'll put one of those on TikTok, and someone who's like an aircraft person will chime in and say, yeah, that is weird. But no, none of your traditional black helicopters or anything like that.
I need to be better about TikTok. I've only put 2 videos up, literally 2, on TikTok. It's actually a much more positive place than especially Twitter and even Facebook at times.
Well, let me tell you something. I'm a big believer in TikTok. There's something different about it. And I have met so many cool people on TikTok. And I have interviewed several people on my show that I met in a comment section of one of my posts on TikTok. I've got an interview tomorrow, same thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like I don't know, like I'm working on 3,500 followers on TikTok. Somehow I only have 86 on Instagram and 51 on X. So I don't know. But TikTok, there's something different about TikTok. I highly recommend it. for anybody into this stuff, and you're surprised at what comes out. For example, the first episode that I ever published on the podcast was called The Mantids. It's on the praying mantis aliens and the Linda Porter case, which is a case where she was taken aboard a craft and basically her soul was moved out of her body into a clone. And a weird niche kind of thing, right? And I put a slideshow on TikTok about this case. And this slideshow currently has like over 300,000 views. I don't know how many thousands of likes and maybe, I don't know, 1,500 comments. I don't know. But the sheer number of people who have chimed in that they have had experiences with these praying mantises is amazing. And every time that I post something about the praying mantises, there's always a handful of people that chime in and say, "Oh yeah, I've seen these. Oh yeah, I dream about these. Oh yeah, these visited me when I was a child." It's Yeah, unlike I don't get that anywhere else except on TikTok. Are there all these people crazy? No, I don't think so. I mean, I think they've had experiences, but yeah, I highly recommend TikTok.
You had missing time when you were a kid. You haven't had any other missing time that you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of. No, I don't know. And I've been told that, like, in the Linda Porter case, when she was taken aboard this craft, she was told by this praying mantis that they could take people out of time and put them back without time passing, essentially. So if they can do that,
Yeah.
I don't know, but maybe that's a more advanced form of it. I don't know.
But also, then again, it takes someone else being around you to even bring up the fact that you were gone.
Yeah,
Because even when you were a kid, you're like, I didn't go anywhere. Your parents are like, yeah, you did. Where the hell you been?
yeah, yeah,
So you have to have that kind of that outside source to go, what the hell?
yeah.
All right, well, we're
So
going
I
to,
don't know.
yeah, that's just one of those things. Not everybody experiences all aspects of the kind of 101 of the abductions, but I do know when it comes to the mantis beings, it's kind of like the dog man. You don't hear of a good dog man encounter story ever. Some can be slightly more chill, but it's the same thing with the mantis beings. I've never heard of someone going, I love the mantis beings. I want to see
Oh
those
no,
all the time.
no. They do. People do love the mantis beings.
They do?
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. Yep.
Oh.
I've gotten more positive than negative feedback about the mantis
Oh,
beings.
I've heard the
Yeah,
opposite. That's wild.
yeah.
Really?
It's weird. I know.
Hmm.
Like some people say they're demons and oh they're evil. They eat kids, but some will say, oh no, no, they come around. I love them. They're cool.
Oh, that's why
Yeah,
I've not heard that aspect of it. Okay.
yeah.
Oh,
So yeah, some people like these mantis
well,
beings.
that's good to hear.
And
It's not all
I
negative.
remember, yeah, I remember from one of your episodes, a woman who describing a golden disc coming in her window, and next to her bed, a beautiful blonde woman appeared. And I think she said to this woman, I know that's not your true form. And the woman said, if you want to see my true form, look out the window. And she looked out the window and there was a praying mantis. So that I think that these beings, now my impression of these mantises is that they're ancient wise scientist types, like they're doing long-term projects. They're if they're not empathetic or if they're not compassionate, at least they understand that they're scary and they try to manage that. But my impression is they're like straight up scientists doing a job kind of thing.
Yeah, very well could be. All right, we're going to switch gears again and let's talk about the apparition in broad daylight.
Oh yeah, this is the only time that I've seen a ghostly apparition in broad daylight. And this was at my mother's house, the house in the historic house in Delaware, the second one that I told you about. After she had passed away, this house fell on me to do something with it. And so I was over there poking around, seeing what I had to deal with. And I was in the backyard and there was all kinds of like crazy plants and fruit trees and there's a bunch of junk in the backyard. And I spooked this thing. It was like a white mist. It was maybe 18 inches to 2 feet long, and it was low to the ground. And it took off, and it took off across the backyard. It was like a white smoke, and it zigzagged around all the obstacles almost like a snake or something, and it just took off. But yeah, it was a white mist, like a white smoke. It was sentient. It was clearly sentient. And I don't know, I have no idea to this day I have no idea what it was. I don't know if it was like a nature spirit or the ghost of a pet, or I don't know. But yeah, it was actually a pretty cool thing to see. I'm glad that I saw that.
Yeah, I agree. I love that one. I would
Yeah.
love to see that at any point in time.
Yeah.
No, I take that back. Maybe not in the middle of the night at the edge of my bed. That's
Yeah.
not quite as fun.
And we did, like, me and my daughter went through the house and took a lot of pictures and went down creepy old dirt basement. And when we looked at the pictures later, there were all kinds of orbs and all kinds of stuff in the pictures. That was cool to see, all the orbs and stuff. And what was interesting is she had an apartment out back. There's like an attached garage with an apartment above it that she rented out. And I had found it was sitting there empty, so I'd found some tenants for her, and I managed it for her. And they would call me whenever my mom gave them a hard time. And my mom did something, I don't know, that they didn't like, and he calls me and he's like, "Hey, Pat," and he says, "By the way, do you know this place is haunted?" I said, "That's what I've been told." And he's like, "Yeah, this place is really haunted." He said, "But I can handle that." So he was okay with it being haunted. He just had issues with his landlady. He said that they had their bed actually lift up. I don't know how cool that would have been
Oh,
with that. Yeah.
whoa.
Yeah, I don't know about that one, but
Did you ever
yeah,
look into the history of that house?
not officially. No, I only know what she told me about it.
Did you
So,
want to cover some of your psychic readings and past life regressions?
yeah, sure. I can go however long you want. No big deal. Past life regression, really interesting. So, this happened last year. So, I had a guest coming on who does past life regressions, and she offered to do one for me for free. She's fairly popular, and this was like a $400 or $500 value. I was like, hell yeah, I'm doing it. So she was going to do, we were doing this past life regression before the episode, before the recording. And so it had to be rescheduled once. And as soon as I agreed to do it, I got the sense that my guides, I hate the term spirit guides because I hate all new age verbiage. So I call them divine guidance. My divine guidance, I knew my divine guidance wasn't too cool with me doing this. And so it was foiled. Like the first attempt was foiled. I had to be rescheduled. And I was like, look, I'm doing this. It's free. She's going to be a guest. I said I would do it. I'm doing it. So we got set up, did the hypnosis, and I recalled some of it. And I have the recording of it that she sent me, but I did not get into any past life stuff whatsoever. And it, what did come up was something from my childhood on Long Island, which was a family tragedy that I was aware of. It was my mother's sister was killed in a car crash somewhere around 1970. And I was aware of that, but I wasn't aware of the far reaching effect that it had. And that was actually like one of the main reasons why I ended up in Delaware and moving out of state. But aside from that, nothing was coming up. And so she asked me, ask my higher self to step forward. And I remember something's coming forward. And I thought, that must be my higher self. I said, it's here. Well, it wasn't my higher self. It was these beings, what I'll call my spirit guides, my divine guidance. And they spoke to the practitioner directly through me. And basically, they said, Patrick is one of us. We will reveal to him what he needs to know when he needs to know it. And we protect him. Basically, we got him. And so she started asking like some other questions, and without having the transcript in front of me or anything, but it was basically they told, this is them speaking to her, and my sense is like it was a group with a spokesman because there was always a delay, and they told her that I am a truth teller and I am here to tell the truth. That's my job. And they said that there's something in me that will not allow me to ultimately be deceived. And that though I may be initially deceived in something, or I may follow along with something, that ultimately I will not be deceived. And ultimately I'll see the truth and I'll speak the truth. And so my job here in this incarnation is to be a truth teller. And that was not what I expected. I expected to hear I was I don't know, somebody in Egypt building the pyramids or something. And so that's what came out of that. And she asked them, is there anything, like the last thing she asked them, is there anything you want to tell him? And they said, yes, that we are proud of him. So that was nice. Yeah, that was what came out of that past life regression. And then after it, I was like, I thought that was all right. I didn't expect that. So I'm expecting this practitioner to like fill me, debrief me, right? Oh yeah, this happens all the time. But she was like, bye. She was done. She had no comment. And to this day, I haven't spoken to her about it. That was it. I was on my own. I was on my own with that information.
Do with which you will.
Yeah, right.
Good luck.
Yeah, that's where I'm at with that. Now it tracks for me. It makes sense to me. I'm on my spiritual journey so far. And that kind of totally makes sense to me. And it fits in with the others, like the Christian cult. Like I was involved in something that was sketchy, right? And but at the same time, it was a learning experience, and I now have context for it decades later that I didn't have then. And so that was all part of the journey, basically, my learning process. And when you think about awakening, new age, ascension, all this, it's really popular right now. And what I'm going to say is that process takes time. Whether someone waking up now, it doesn't happen instantaneously because mine's taken place over decades. And so anyone who's experiencing some sort of an awakening process just needs to be aware that it's not instantaneous. It takes a lot of time for that spiritual awakening.
Do you still utilize a pendulum for contact purposes?
I do not. No. I think that was turned off for me. They don't want me to use that. I've even like tried to use it here and there just to get a quick answer on something, and it doesn't work. So I don't have that. I don't have that anymore. But it was replaced with better stuff. When you're using that, I think one of the problems is a lot of different things can jump in there, and then you don't know who you're talking to. And so that I think that's one problem with that, and I think that's one reason why my divine guidance doesn't want me messing with it, is that. And I think it was an introductory experience into the reality of the fact that these things are out there. So early on, yeah, it was okay. I think I'm Like I'm past that, like I'm advanced past that now.
Yeah, I suppose you could be messing with more of a trickster element, right?
Oh, there were some tricksters.
Yeah.
There were some tricksters that chimed in and just, okay, whatever. But yeah, there's some very playful, not even really meaning harm, just, I don't know, just silliness. There's a lot of silliness in there, in the astral.
Well, Patrick, I cannot thank you enough for being willing to come on and have this chat with me. I very much enjoyed it. You are welcome back anytime. And before I let you go, let everyone know where they can find you and the podcast.
Yeah, sure. And it's been my pleasure to be here, and I do appreciate it a lot coming on. I enjoyed talking. Anytime you want to have me back, let me know. So the podcast is Aliens for Beginners. It's on Spotify and Apple Podcasts are the primary. And it's on, I know, a whole bunch of different platforms. It's on platforms I never even heard of. When I look at my analytics, I probably, I don't know, a dozen different platforms. So I guess anywhere you listen to your podcast. And my primary social media outlet is TikTok. On there's Patrick Roy or at Aliens for Beginner singular. I'm also I'm on Instagram at Aliens for Beginners Pod. I'm on X. I'm on Threads a little bit, trying to work with Substack a little bit. I'm on Facebook. I do have an Aliens for Beginners podcast YouTube channel. It's not. I haven't put much effort into it. There's some stuff on there. There's some good stuff on there, but I haven't devoted any time to building that up. I got to work on that a little bit more. Oh, and I also have, for anyone who's interested in magic or the occult, I split off a second podcast specifically for that stuff because I'm interested in that stuff, and I didn't want to. I was mixing it in with the alien stuff, and I just split off a separate podcast, and that's called the Huluppu Tree Podcast, HULUPPU, and that's based on the story of Enon on the Huluppu Tree, and that is currently on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
I'm glad I didn't have to say a couple of these different names and words. And you were there with you. I'm glad I didn't find that first and go, what about the Huluppu Tree Podcast? I'd butcher it somehow. Thanks again, Patrick.
Hey, my pleasure. Thank you.